Hey everyone, welcome back to Aurelia City series in City Skylines. So, we built the big public transport hub in the last episode. It combined an elevated train station with a tram stop, a bus terminal, and we also built a big park and ride parking lot. And even though I have plans to expand that area some more, I wanted to jump somewhere else and start something completely new that I planned for a long time. We will move back to the other side of the whole city, back to the new industrial site, which I would like to expand by adding a futuristic-looking cargo harbor with lots of custom builds and details. So let's go. This is of course going to be a river cargo harbor because it's kind of strategically placed. It's not exactly built on the main river, but it's built on this lake that's formed by the upper reservoir, I suppose, and it has that side river flowing directly into it. But later in the next episode, I'm also going to build like a connecting canal, short connecting canal, that's going to make it easier for cargo from the main river to go into this place. And if I'm not going to forget that, in some next episodes, I'm probably going to add another river that's going to flow into this lake. So this harbor is eventually going to be very strategically positioned so that all the rivers are just going to convert into this area, and all the cargo from the rivers can easily just transfer its cargo, the containers, for example, on trains, especially the trains on the railway that continues into the old industrial area, and also on the other side to the cargo hub on the airport that we built some time ago. Okay, and there's obviously going to be more facilities to just load cargo on the trucks. Now, I wanted to make it completely customized, kind of continue the basic trend that we started on that cargo hub on the airport, where I also did a highly customized project, right? So I'm building my own barges, kind of small barges for these containers, as you can see here. So this is going to be like one kind of a barge, which is going to hold containers. So I used all kinds of different objects in here. You could have seen me for example, use that vanilla wood truck, which I only extracted those like ribs from, so that it's going to look like some kind of a holding cage, let's say, for the containers. Now, the second barge that I'm going to build later, it's going to be similar, but I'm just going to use it for like tanks, for storing some kind of fuel, for example. And the main barge that I need to build, that's of course going to be some kind of an engine for all of this. I have to admit that I took some inspiration because I was playing the new Subnautica game, the Below Zero, and it has the new vehicle. It's like an underwater vehicle, sure, but it's called a sea truck, and the basic concept is the same. It has the engine at the front, and you can have all these kinds of modules just connected at the back of it. So I took inspiration from that, and I'm building these similar sized barges, but the first one, the front one, is going to be the engine, this one, and then it's just going to be it's just going to have all these cargo barges connected at the back of it. Is that realistic? Would that be possible in real life? I don't know, and I don't really care, honestly. I just really wanted to do this, so it's going to look cool, right? So for this particular engine barge, I'm using an actual barge as the base, and then I'm using, I think it's some kind of airport towing vehicle on the top that I just modified. So I basically took out only the main body of it and especially the cabin at the front, because that looks absolutely perfect for this purpose. And then I'm using all these kinds of different boxes and fans, for example, to make it look like there's an engine below it. So, you know, it's just looking really great. I did some very close-up cinematic shots later, so you will see the engine and the finished completed barges in more detail. Let's now explain quickly how this cargo harbor is supposed to function, at least in theory, and then I would like to talk about something slightly different. So I'm building these railways, and they are going well above those canals, those tiny canals that are on the side of this lake. Now, it's supposed to work by just providing a space for the barges to just maybe reverse into these canals with obviously all the cargo barges with containers and tanks and whatever in tow. And cranes are just going to pick up the cargo and put it on the trains that are going to be waiting on the railway on the top. And I'm also going to provide a couple of like buffer zones to just put the cargo in before putting them on the trains, and doing all kinds of levels. I think I'm going to do like 3 levels, so there's just going to be some verticality in here as well, lots of details, lots of custom areas. Now, this leads me to a topic that I really wanted to mention for a long time, and that is the general topic of why do we even build these kinds of projects? Like, why do we bother using procedural objects to do these kinds of decorative buildings and all these kinds of doors and cranes and containers everywhere? And the game is obviously not going to even know that it's there. It's not gonna function. So I'm not gonna have the cranes pick up the cargo, put them on trucks, and deliver them to shops. That's exactly the same situation for the cargo hub on the airport, and all kinds of different projects around Aurelia. You know, the dam, for example, is not really generating any power. It's not really regulating the flow of the water. So what's really the point? It's not really contributing to the gameplay features aspects of the game. So let me explain this. Now, let me first provide some background, and I think that this is probably going to be very similar to some other maybe content creators or just, you know, detailers in City Skylines. So I was always interested in making models in real life. When I was a lot younger, I was buying this magazine in the Czech Republic called the ABC, which came with papercraft models in the middle. It had like printed hard papers that you can just take out and just, you know, do some papercraft. They usually had these kinds of very, very tiny models, I think in the scale of 1 to 300 or 400, was it? 300 probably. They were called the mini boxes. They still exist today, by the way. They have their own shop, like separated from the magazine these days, I think. And you can buy all these little tiny, not really super detailed paper models that are very good for like kids to build, and it's just, you know, kind of satisfying to see the creations. And obviously later I was interested in more like serious model making from like plastic, and you can see all kinds of channels on YouTube because this topic is really popular still. However, I found that it kind of tends to be a bit more popular for just seeing it rather than learning how to do it. Like there's, for example, this one channel called Plasmo, I think the guy is also Czech, and he's building like really nice looking, super realistic dioramas of like military vehicles and, you know, fighter jets and all these kinds of things, because that's obviously the most popular topic for the plastic models. And he obviously spends like so much time doing those kinds of models, but that's just part of the fun, right? And the fact that people just enjoy watching it when it's finished, or even the process of how he's doing it, that's just super nice. But when he makes some kind of like tutorials on how this is actually done, it's usually the less viewed topics, right? So that kind of tells you that people just want to see the results of these more than actually learn how to do this. But for us, people who just enjoy doing these kinds of models, it's obviously nice to do this and just share it with the world, you know. And the problem with especially the papercraft, because the papercraft is I think easier to do. Well, depends on the techniques and styles and everything, sure. But especially the mini boxes, it was super easy to create like a building because it was literally just a box, and create your own towns. I think that there was like a one system where you could have built like a big airport, actually. I was trying to build that one, but unfortunately it was just so big, and I had it as a kid in my room, and someone was always stepping on it. So eventually had to just get rid of it because it was already a complete mess. And now that I'm older, I just don't have the space for it. That's simple as that. And even the time, because it obviously takes a very long time to put it together, you know, more time than it takes in City Skylines, for example, to create these kinds of creations, these cargo harbors, or the entire city, you know, like the entire city in City Skylines, Aurelia, it took me like 3 years at this point. But if I was doing this in real life from paper, it would probably take me like 30 years at least, right? With all the details and everything, at least if I was not like scaling it down, or just scaling down the details or something like it. Anyway, all of this kind of leads me to just explaining that I am partially substituting my need really for just some model making buy City Skylines, because City Skylines is cheap. It doesn't really take that much time to create these kinds of things because you have all of these beautiful tools at your disposal, procedural objects, move it, all the other mods. So that's just, partially substituting the model making. Just, I don't need to have that much space for it. I just have my PC here, really, and that's it. So that's also the reason why, some people comment, well, why don't you play console? Or why don't you try, playing complete vanilla or something like that? And I just don't want to, because that's something you can't really do these kinds of things there, right? And I've already played a couple of thousand hours in this game, so I don't really have a need to really explore the gameplay features anymore. So I suppose that's probably why the Hexagon series was, kind of ended already, let's face it. So I'm just going to do these kinds of projects. And do I mind that this cargo harbor is not going to move? The trains in here are not going to, move in here. The containers are not going to be picked up by the cranes. No, I don't mind that, because I was doing this right from the start with the idea that I'm just building my model as if I was doing it in real life from paper or plastic or something like it, Obviously, it's like a nice bonus, and I always say that in City Skylines, that if you can, do make it functional, at least somewhat, make people, especially if you create like custom parks, then there's little excuse to not making people go into it, because it's just so easy to do that. And, have all the vehicles just moving around the intersections and everything. That's also another thing that I wanted to mention. When I was doing the big interchange video, the second one, the previous one, 88, I think it was a number, then some people commented like, well, this is just a terrible traffic solution. It wouldn't be working in real life, blah, blah, blah. Well, do I really care? Not really, because I was just building a model, I was just building something that I liked looking at, basically. So I don't really mind that it's not like a perfect real life traffic solution, because I was not really caring about building a real life traffic solution that would be efficient and eco-friendly and follow the current trends of transportation or whatever. I just look at the main interchange and I'm like, oh yeah, trains and cars and everything, just goes on it. That's like firing all the neurons in my brain that are just screaming, satisfaction or something like it. So that's basically the explanation of why I bother doing these kinds of things in City Skylines, and eventually why I even play City Skylines. Now, obviously, from time to time, I do want to care about functionality of the game, so I think just a couple of episodes into the future of the Aurelia series, I really started paying attention to, for example, the unemployment or the number of citizens in the city, and all those flashing symbols that, industry doesn't have enough cargo and stuff. So I was kind of fiddling with that. I think I might even put some kind of glimpses of that process into some future episodes, but not more really than that. I remember that back in the day, just a couple of years ago, when, for example, the mods like No Problem and all these kinds of remove pipes and remove the need for electricity, and when all of these mods kind of started appearing, there were a lot of people that were like, well, why people even bother playing this game when they just turn all of the gameplay features off? And that was kind of around the time when procedural objects, started to be a thing. Move It was already a thing. And people suddenly realized, hey, I can actually build my own models in this game. This is great. I can substitute the real-life model making, I suppose, into City Skylines. That's just, or by City Skylines. So that's it. That's basically it. We are just creating our own models. And I suppose that a lot of people in City Skylines, they don't really try, me included, to build like ideal cities. I'm not really building Aurelia to present some kind of realistic future vision of like a city. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just building stuff that I think that might look cool, that I think people might enjoy, watching being built, and they're obviously being finished as well. And that's kind of it. I'm not really exploring like a real life concepts of transportation or anything. So when people write, well, this interchange is just absolutely terrible, well, it looks good to me. I haven't really done any calculations how it would perform in real life. I haven't done like proper traffic simulations or something. I'm just building it because, yeah, I've said it many times before, but I'm just building it because I like watching it. That's pretty much it. So hopefully that kind of cleared this issue, and I suppose that people will still really be a bit confused when I'm going to present these kinds of projects in City Skylines. But I don't know, maybe I'm going to link this part, and hopefully it's going to be a bit clearer what my motivations are to play this game and create these kinds of things in City Skylines. And obviously it's really nice that you already have all these objects ready, because I wouldn't really want to make my own models for absolutely everything. And I'm actually the kind of person who, if I should start right from the scratch, I probably wouldn't have these kinds of ideas at all, because most of my projects in Aurelia and Altengrad, they come from just watching some of the buildings, new additions to the workshop, and thinking, oh yeah, with this building I could do this and that, these kinds of things. So for example, this cargo harbor, obviously the main element in this cargo harbor are those futuristic buildings. Yeah, this one that I'm placing right here. So these are made by quad rioters. I really like the quad buildings. You already know that. And when I watched that building for the first time, when I saw that, I knew that I wanted to create it on some kind of a sloped area. So I already did that. Oh, by the way, right now I need to explain what I'm doing right here. So this is something that I discovered just a couple of months ago. You can actually, with Move It, copy paste these kinds of outside connection roads right from the edge of the map and place them anywhere inside your city, and they will still have the arrows. So what I'm doing by that, I'm just, creating some kind of functionality to the harbor by providing the outside connection inside of those buildings. So cargo traffic is going to spawn there. I banned personal traffic, but I have cargo just spawning from those connections. So it's just going to look like this harbor is actually bringing cargo into the entire city. Okay, so that's just something that that is really nice. You might easily use that for your own custom harbors, cargo stations, whatever, if they're not really supposed to work because you are doing these kinds of things. Or you might even use it in your more gameplay oriented projects. That's kind of up to you. It's just a nice thing to have in City Skylines. It's a nice gameplay feature. Anyway, what I was talking about, I completely forgot. Oh yeah, I was talking about the models, because it's much easier for me to just look at some things. Oh yeah, I was talking about that quad building. So when I saw that quad building, I thought I want to put it on a slope. So I put it, for example, on that staircase, leading to the pedestrian highway in the suburb area, if you remember that. I think I even used it in the old industrial zone. Maybe I haven't. I'm not exactly sure. But I definitely used it in the new industrial zone. And it was always clear that it has to be built so that in front of the building, you have a lower terrain and then some elevated terrain on the other side of it. And when I was thinking where next I'm going to use it, it was clear that I want to build some kind of a harbor out of it, right? And all these different buildings as well. It was also clear how it needs to be built. It's, for example, the case for the barge as well. Would I have an idea how to build a barge completely from scratch if I was just sitting in front of Blender? Probably not, honestly. But when I saw the airport towing truck, it was immediately clear how it needs to look like. I don't know, I just got the idea that, oh yeah, I'm just going to turn it into a barge because it has a perfect looking front cabin that's just going to look absolutely perfect. And there's nothing easier, for me at least, to just take procedural objects and convert it into whatever I want. And this is the story of all these kinds of places in Aurelia. So, for example, with the interchange projects, I'm always using that round building from Finland, I think. It's called Imperial Talo or something like that. And again, it's just a perfect shape to put inside the interchange loops. But then again, it's also giving me the ideas for these kinds of interchange loops. So I really wouldn't want to create my own buildings for those kinds of purposes because I just wouldn't have those ideas. The ideas come because I have the buildings, not the other way around. So that's what City Skylines is really so good, because, or the workshop, why is it so good? Because you can just download all these kinds of things and immediately think about where you would want to use them in your in your cities. So that's absolutely great. Even these kinds of networks like bridges, pillars, everything. It's just great that you have all these things. It's just super amazing that the workshop is as big as it is, and you can just choose all these different objects and just work around with them. That's what City Skylines is so great. That's what's so great about it. I know that a lot of people prefer the gameplay side of the game, and some people just I suppose that they will never really understand this, but that's normal, because that's the same with just real life model making. A lot of people just don't understand the real life model making and think of it as something completely useless and redundant. It's just going to pick up dust when it's just standing on the shelves eventually. But it's also the process of making these things that's satisfying, enjoyable. So that's the reason why I already sunk, thousands of hours, I think like 5,000 already hours into this game. So from time to time, I'm not really just dismissing the gameplay features of this game completely. Obviously, I do still enjoy, some functionality of this game, because this game still works like reasonably fine, even though obviously after a couple of thousands of hours, you will notice some disadvantages to how certain things are programmed in the game or how they are supposed to work. But it's the best thing that we have. Honestly, there's nothing better really to build your cities with, and it's just working. It's looking great. And if something is not working, then there are tons of mods that can change that, right? That's kind of the point of mods. I always said that on the streams, like just don't blindly download some collections of mods. Just think about what you actually need, what bothers you about the functionality of the game, and then try to see if maybe it can be changed with using some mods. And I eventually just arrived into this state of the game where I'm just building my own models in it, because it is possible. It is absolutely possible to do these kinds of things. And then, we have some kind of commenters that say, well, maybe you should do these kinds of things in vanilla. It would be more impressive. But, well, no, because first of all, it's just not possible to do it. I don't really want to bother doing these kinds of things in vanilla. It would be like doing papercraft without using scissors, Would that be more challenging? Yeah, I suppose. Would the results be impressive? No, I don't really think they would be. So that's just why people use mods and do these kinds of projects in City Skylines. I'm obviously talking only about my experience, but I have a feeling that a lot of people share this kind of view. They just want to create their own visions in City Skylines, and it's a sandbox game after all, so you can do whatever you want in it. And with mods, with these kinds of mods, you really can do absolutely everything in it. Okay, so I think that will be enough about this topic. I think I already exhausted it. Hopefully it kind of cleared things up. So let's talk more about what am I actually doing in here. So I was doing all kinds of detailing in this cargo harbor, really trying to just put all kinds of things in here, make it really messy, very industrial looking and kind of dense, right? So I eventually decided to do these, I think I call them like fingers, these kinds of places that are between the small canals. And a couple of these fingers have the tanks. So for example, I'm going to complement those with these cargo barges, which also have these tanks. They might be just intended for some kind of, futuristic fuel that Aurelia discovered maybe, and it's just being transported around. I also put all kinds of these empty barges here and there, and also I'm going to put them in the river with the engines and kind of make it look like this place is alive, that this place is actually quite busy. I was not exactly sure how would these barges function. Now that I think of it, it probably would be necessary to put another engine at the back of these barges to, help it steer. But I'm also thinking that maybe the barges themselves have some kind of a engine, or not an engine, but like a fan. How are they called in English? I don't even know. The screws at the back of a ship, whatever. Today's cargo ship also have these perpendicular to their length, right? So they can maneuver better in canals or in harbors or something. So maybe the barges, the cargo barges have them as well, and they are just powered by the engine at the front to better maneuver them or something like that, But like I said before, I'm just I'm just building a model that I kind of found cool. So that's all the reason I need in City Skylines to do these kinds of projects. Anyway, this is the finished thing. So we can see the harbor. We could have seen the engine in more detail. I'd eventually put some lights at the front, so it's just looking a bit better. And then I did all this kind of detailing. So all kinds of containers, surfaces. I paid close attention to doing the surfaces, so all kinds of decals on them. I tried altering between the asphalt surfaces, so that's going to stand out a bit more, and the pavement with lots of decals on them, and just a couple of trains on the tracks. I had to modify a couple of these wagons with procedural objects so that it's going to look like it's ready to accept the containers from the top, right? So the crane is just going to put it on the top. I know that I eventually made it so that the cranes are overlapping between the different fingers, but I was thinking that the entire harbor is just like computer operated, AI operated or something like that, and the AI is probably just moving the cranes so that they will never collide, obviously, and they are just free to move wherever they want to, because all of it is kind of synchronized, right? So that's the explanation. The cranes themselves are built so that the actual hand for the containers can move. It's obviously like a cantilever, like a double cantilever construction, and it's made so that the containers can move to both sides, both ends of the crane. And there is also like a second crane on the top of the whole structure, which has like a concrete block that moves again between both sides of the crane, so that it has like a counterweight no matter the position of the actual container arm. Okay, so that's at least like a basic working principle, theoretical working principle of those kinds of cranes. I also returned to the old industrial area. I finished it with putting some pillars under the highway. I think the pillars really turned out looking great, and I also did all this nature detailing, kind of connecting the two industrial areas together. And also I finished it with some couple of buildings on the top level with that public transport hub area and the parking lot. Just a couple of buildings there, mostly residential, and I think one more interesting looking office building. Anyway, guys, that is going to be all. Next episode, we are going to continue with industry. We are going to build some experimental solar power plants, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching this episode. Hopefully you liked it. Take care and goodbye.